After studying this module, we shall be able to learn about decision making and its characteristics, identify the process of decision making, learn about various types of managerial decisions, understand the techniques of decision making, which are Delphi technique, brainstorming, simulation, linear programming, and operations research.
To decide is to select an alternative out of various alternatives. The manager task in the organization involves taking decisions continuously for various tasks. So, decision is a kind of choice of an alternative, and the process which is adopted for reaching to a particular decision is a decision making process. All functions of management, starting from planning, organizing, staffing, directing, and controlling, cannot be performed without decision making. Business decisions cannot be taken unless some systematic procedure is followed. A decision may relate to an end or means or both, meaning thereby, if end is known or targets are aware of, then decision has to be taken on the means to achieve it. And if end is also not known, then through systematic and logical process of reasoning and analysis, an end may also need to be developed. Decision making is a process of analyzing various alternatives and to arrive at a desirable action. Decision making is a form of planning. Like planning, decision making involves choosing a future course of action among the various available alternatives. Planning and deciding both involves mental exercise and both have a perpetual existence. Because of this situation, the decision making is regarded by many writers as a type of planning. An individual decision making, a decision is taken by an individual or a single person, and good decision making is a skill to be learned by the managers to manage their teams.
Let us begin with the concept of decision making. To decide is to select an alternative out of various alternatives. A decision may relate to an end or means or both. Decision making is in the form of planning. According to Coons and O'Donnell, decision making is the actual selection from among alternatives course of action. Let us now discuss the basic characteristics of decision making. Decision making is a selection process. It is a selection of best alternative out of various available alternatives. Decision making is based on the goals of the organization. It is a continuous process because each and every task of the organization continuously involves decision making. Decision making is a core of planning because to plan is to determine the future course of action, which involves decision making. All the components of planning, like objectives, different policies, procedures, are the result of decision making process. Decision making is both a managerial function as well as an organizational process because it is the responsibility of the managers that involves a continuous process of decision making, sometimes as an individual or as a group or team members together or as an organization as a whole. Decision making is an intellectual process because skills are required with mental exercise as to reasoning, analyzing, judgment, etc. Decision making involves commitment. The manager should be committed to the organization and should take decisions on time with best efforts so as to give best solution to the problem. Decisions may be wrong because they are based on future which is uncertain. Therefore, it may happen that decisions based on analysis may prove wrong.
Biases usually creep up into decision making process. Many different people have made a decision about the same question and then craft potential cognitive interventions and aimed at improving the outcome of decision making. Some take longer time to decide while others take comparatively a shorter time. Herbert A. Simon coined the phrase bounded rationality to express the idea that human decision making is limited by available information, available time, and the mind's information processing ability. Further, psychological research has identified individual differences between two cognitive styles. Maximizers try to make the optimal decisions, whereas satisfiers simply try to find a solution that is good enough. Maximizers tend to take longer making decisions due to the need to maximize performance across all variables and make the trade off carefully. They also tend to more often regret their decisions, perhaps because they are more able than satisfiers to recognize that a decision turned out to be suboptimal. There are also n number of biases that influences our decision making process. There is the confirmation bias, premature termination of search for evidence, which means people tend to accept the first alternative that looks like it might work. Cognitive inertia, that is, unwillingness to change existing thought pattern is the face of new circumstances. Selective perception, generally people screen out information that they do not think it is important. Then there is a wishful thinking, a tendency to want to see things in a certain, usually positive light, which can distort the entire thinking process. People tend to place more attention or more recent information and either ignore or forget more distant information. This is known as recency. Repetition bias, a willingness to believe that one has been told the most often and by the greatest number of different sources. Decisions are unduly influenced by initial information that shapes our view of subsequent information. Most of the time, peer pressure changes the course of the process altogether. We look at a decision and we look at a decision as a small step in a process, and this tends to perpetuate a series of similar decisions. People tend to attribute their own success to internal factors, including abilities and talents, but explain their failures in terms of external factors such as bad luck.
Let us now discuss the steps in the process of decision making. 1. Defining the problem. Decisions are taken for the problems. It is important to identify the problem first because what at times might appear to be the problem may only be the symptom of that problem. It is important to diagnose and find out the real problem and then to define it. Second, analyzing the problem. After defining a real problem, analyzing a problem in detail requires getting facts. Analyzing involves the following questions: what type of problem it is? What is the main root cause of the problem? How important it is? When is the solution required? Who would solve it? The manager will do well here as also to think of intangible factors in addition to getting all the facts feasible under the circumstances. Third, searching for alternatives. Various alternatives are found out to choose from so that one of the best solutions for the problem can later be selected. These alternatives may be the past practices, techniques followed in the organization. No search is required if one and only one solution is there. It is important to note that there may be some limiting factors that may affect the generation of the alternatives. For example, if the organization has limitations in raising funds, a project involving large projects cannot be considered. In the process of decision making is evaluation of alternatives. The evaluation of alternatives on the basis of its merits and demerits, cost of implementation, risk involved, time taken, etc., is the next step to select one of the best alternatives for the defined problem. The best alternative should provide greatest amount of benefits and for which each alternative is tested. A probable, desirable, and undesirable consequence of every alternative he should be able to foresee before actually adopting it. It is better to not to take a solution, that is, no action at all, rather than taking an unpleasant decision. Fifth, choice of alternatives. The extent to which every alternative contributes its best towards the problem, that alternative can be selected. It is possible after comparing the results obtained of all the possible alternatives selected. The experience and knowledge and the intellectual ability of the managers allow him to select the best alternatives easily. Sixth, implementation of decision. This is the time to convert the decision taken into action for achieving the targets. But it should be ensured that the desired results are achieved with the alternative chosen. Hence, putting the decision into action is an integral part of decision making. Whatever decisions are taken, they should be communicated clearly to all the employees, and their acceptance should also be ensured for its successful implementation and getting favorable results. Seventh, follow up. To follow up is to see that whether the selected decision is giving the desired result or not. It is the job of the manager to have a close look on the results of the decision taken and review his decision according to the changes. Whether decisions are good or not, it can be seen through results, favorable or unfavorable.
Let us now discuss about the pros and cons of the individual decision making. An individual is generally bound to make prompt decisions as against a group which is dominated by various people, making decision making process very time consumed and tedious task. Moreover, assembling group members and making sure that consensus is arrived at, it consumes a lot of time. So that is why individual decision making is considered to be a better decision making. Individuals are accountable for their acts and performance. They do not escape responsibilities. While in a group, it is not easy to hold any one person accountable for a wrong decision. Individual decision making saves time, money, and energy as individuals make prompt and logical decisions generally. While group decision making involves a lot of time, money, as well as energy. Individual decisions are more focused and rational as compared to the group. Now we are moving on to the cons of individual decision making also. A group has a potential of collecting more and full information compared to an individual while making decisions. An individual while making any decision uses his own intuition and perception, which might distort the effective decision making. While a group has many members, so there are chances that these distorts can be eliminated and may result in better decision making. A group discovers hidden talent and core competency also of the employees in the organization. So we can always say that group decision making is a better decision making. An individual will not take into consideration every member's interest in taking individual decisions, while a group will take into account the interests of all the members of the organization.
The process of decision making, have a look on various types of managerial decisions. Programmed decisions. These types of decisions are made for routine and repetitive nature tasks or problems. These are programmed on the basis of rules, policies, procedures already determined. For example, a promotion of an employee is done through a promotion policy. Non programmed decisions. These decisions are taken by the top management for unexpected problems that are unique in nature and for which There are standards, policies, or procedures are set. They are non recurring in nature, for example, purchasing machinery, etc. Strategic decisions. Strategy is a long range plan and is formulated at top level. Strategy involves choices that determine the nature and directions of the organizational activities towards the attainment of goals. Strategic decisions may be related to internal and external growth. Internal growth strategy decisions would include market penetration, development, product development, and external growth strategy decisions such as joint ventures, mergers, etc. Strategic decisions are generally non programmed decisions, that is, they are not routine decisions. Tactical decisions. Such decisions are related to routine problems and are generally taken at lower level on the basis of procedures and policies laid out by the top management. Administrative decisions. Every divisional area has a plan to proceed towards organizational objectives, and administrative decisions are related with the implementation and development of such divisional plans. For example, finance, materials, training and development related plans. Individual decisions. A decision taken up by individual or a single person is an individual decision and is taken on the basis of defined policies, etc. They are generally related to routine problems. Group decisions. When decisions are taken by the board of directors, departmental committees, or by any other group is called a group decision. They are not related to group problems, rather complex and unique. It is observed that decisions taken by a group are better than decisions taken by the individuals. The various techniques of decision making are Delphi, simulation, linear programming, and operations research. In this technique, suggestions are invited from a panel of experts who are physically separated and unknown to each other. After collecting all suggestions, they are again sent for panel suggestions, and the process of taking and giving suggestions continues till convergence takes place. This helps to improve the quality of decisions. The four basic rules that are followed in a brainstorming session are: criticism is not allowed, even unusual ideas are welcomed, improvement of ideas and discussion of various combinations, large quantity of ideas is required to make chances of better idea.
Now, the name Delphi derives from the Oracle of Delphi. The authors of the method were not happy with this name because it implies something oracular, something smacking a little of the occult. The Delphi method is based on the assumption that group judgments are more valid than individual judgments. The Delphi method was developed at the beginning of the Cold War to forecast the impact of technology on warfare. In 1944, General Harry H. Arnold ordered the creation of the report for the US Army Air Corps on the future technological capabilities that might be used by the military persons. Different approaches were tried, but the shortcomings of the traditional forecasting methods, such as theoretical approach, quantitative models, or trend extrapolation, in areas where precise scientific laws have not been established yet, quickly became apparent. To combat these shortcomings, the Delphi method was developed by Project RAND during the 1950-60s by Olaf Helmer, Norman Dalkey, and Nicholas Rescher. It has been used ever since together with various modifications and reformulations such as Feldman-Delphi procedure. Experts were asked to give their opinion and on the probability, frequency and intensity of possible enemy attacks. Other experts could anonymously give feedback. This process was repeated several times until a consensus was emerged.
Brainstorming. In this method, to a particular group of persons, problem is given and from them ideas and suggestions are noted. The term was popularized by Alex Fackney Osborne in the 1963 book Applied Imagination. This method leads to creative thinking through various novel ideas and provides unique solution. The ideas so received are critically examined and the best ideas are selected. During the entire discussion, enriching ideas are encouraged and generated without any interruption. Participants are gathered from a wide range of disciplines having a wide range of experiences. A brief description of the problem is written down and explained by the team leader, and any doubts regarding the problem in the minds of participants are cleared and sorted out to keep the session focused. Once all the solutions have been written down, the list is evaluated to determine the best action to correct the problem. Simulation. It is a technique of reproducing a phenomenon likely to occur in actual practice. Probability plays an important role in this technique where random numbers are assigned to each likely event depending on the probability of its happening. The outcome is tested on the basis of cost and benefits of each course of action.
Simulation is a decision analysis and support tool. Simulation software allows you to evaluate, compare, and optimize alternative designs, plans, and policies. As such, it provides a tool for explaining and defending decisions to the various stakeholders. Simulation should be used when the consequences of the proposed action, plan, or design cannot be directly and immediately observed. That is, the consequences are delayed in time, or they are dispersed in space, or it is simply impractical or prohibitively expensive to test the alternatives directly. For example, when implementing a strategic plan for a company, the impacts are likely to take months or years to materialize. Simulation is particularly valuable when there is a significant uncertainty regarding the outcome or consequences of a particular alternative under consideration. Probabilistic simulation also allows you to deal with this uncertainty in a quantifiable way. Perhaps most importantly, simulation should be used when the system under consideration has complex interactions and requires the input from multiple disciplines. In this case, it is difficult for any one person to easily understand the system. A simulation model can act as a framework to integrate the various components in order to better understand their interactions. As such, it becomes a management tool that keeps you focused on the bigger picture without getting lost in unimportant details.
Linear programming. This technique is based on linear relationship between the variables involved. It aims at optimally utilizing the limited resources to minimize cost or to maximize profits. It is particularly used in case of managerial decision making for production plans, warehouse location, transport routing, etc.
When it comes to making decisions, one should always weigh the positive and negative business consequences and should favor the positive outcomes so as to reduce the cognitive dissonance resulting thereafter. This avoids the possible losses to the organization and keeps the company running with a sustained growth. Sometimes avoiding decision making seems easier, especially when you get into a lot of confrontation after making the tough decision. But making the decisions and accepting its consequences is the only way to stay in control of your corporate life and time. Linear programming is that branch of mathematical programming which is designed to solve optimization problems where all the constraints as well as the objectives are expressed as linear functions. It was developed by George B. Denting in 1947. Its earlier application was solely related to the activities of the Second World War. However, soon its importance was recognized and it came in to occupy a prominent place in industry and trade. Linear programming is a technique for making decisions under certainty, that is, when all the courses of options available to the organizations are known and the objectives of the firm along with the constraints are also quantified.
This method deals with scientific analysis of decision problems. It facilitates decision making by supplying quantitative information to the decision maker. Operations research involves the construction and testing of model. For example, probability theory, games theory, network analysis, queuing theory, etc. for analysis of problems. Let us now recapitulate what we have learned in this module. Decision is a kind of choice of an alternative. It is based on the goals of the organization and a continuous process because each and every task of the organization continuously involves taking decisions. The process of decision making starts with defining a problem, analyzing it, searching for alternatives, evaluation of alternatives, choice of alternatives, implementation of decision, and follow up. The various types of managerial decisions are programmed and non programmed decisions, strategic decisions, tactical, administrative, and individual and group decisions. The decision making techniques are Delphi, brainstorming, simulation, linear programming, and operations research.